Right, Andy, so we've got Santa Maura set up here. Perhaps you'd like to just chat us through dispositions, how the game works, turn sequence, etc., just for the benefit of the viewers. And I'll kind of chip in with any questions which I'll probably have as we go along, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, certainly. So this game is representing the invasion of the island of Santa Maura by the British with a French garrison defending in 1810. So it's one of the Ionian Islands. It was actually right next to the mainland. It's kind of an appendage off the mainland. It's called Lefkada now, the island, but it was called Santa Maura in those days. And there's a big fortress in the centre. This on the map, this is the fortress of Santa Maura.
Yep.
And the allied player is going to land and have to try and capture the fortress.
Okay.
The French player is trying to defend the fortress, prevent the fortress from falling. Whoever controls Santa Maura when the game ends will be the winner.
Okay.
So in this version of the Limits of Glory series, there's no victory points for holding different places.
Right.
There's only one place that's important, and that is the fortress.
Okay.
Nothing else matters.
Okay.
The island itself, this bit here, there was a big island appendage down here, a massive sort of rocky outcrop, which played no part in the battle at all.
Okay.
This is kind of like a sandy bay at the head of the island that connects it to the mainland. So this is the kind of Greek Albanian mainland over here,
right? And
there's this kind of isthmus that goes out towards it. So the French start occupying the island, the main town, Amiaxia. I can't pronounce any of that. So they're in the town. This is kind of like a sandbar that goes, and this is like a lagoon. Which these have got 0 space values. Right. The number in the spaces is the amount of dice you can roll to try and get out of the space.
Okay.
So, and you need to get a success, and a success is a 5 or a 6 when you roll a dice. So if you've got 0 space, that means you get no dice to roll out there. So basically, these are impassable spaces. So you can't enter them. And if you do end up forced to retreat into one of these spaces, then you're destroyed.
Okay.
So they sort of prevent people from entering certain areas. So there's 0 space. You can't go onto the mainland because this is part of the Ottoman Empire, which wasn't part of the war in 1810. The fortress itself has got a bastion either side, the west bastion and east bastion.
Okay.
It shows a little bit of a kind of a moat there in between, but this you can move freely between these. So the French player, if they're in the fortress, they can move either side to the bastions as though they're in adjacent space. This is not a block to movement.
Okay.
So each of the fortresses have got these markers here, which are shore batteries.
Can we just move those up to the camera, Andy, so the guys can see those as well?
So it's a little cartoon of a fortification with a few cannons coming out the side. It's a Gilray cartoon.
Yeah, sure. Nice. Very nice.
And at the start of the game, the fortress of Santa Maura starts with a garrison of 6 infantry, a field cannon, some artillery, with Camus, who is the fortress commander.
Okay.
And then you've got shore batteries facing inland. This is like an inland bay, like a sea bay.
Yeah.
And then out, this is the Ionian Sea out this way. So the sea either side of the fortress.
Yeah.
And they've got shore batteries facing either way. The west bastion here's got a shore battery going out to the Ionian Sea, and the east bastion again into the bay and out to the sea. So in this game, there's no French naval, but there's lots and lots of British naval. So the British ships are delivering the troops, and they may well take on the bastions to try and improve the chances of the British for taking the fortresses.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
And just these little areas in the middle here, what do they represent?
Yeah, great. So all the areas are like spaces with a value in them. These are kind of land spaces, the fortress space. Okay. There were a couple of causeways that connected the town and went out to the fortress and to the bastion. And these actually played a key part in the battle. When the British landed, they landed over here, and they soon took the town. And in history, how they actually did it. And then they marched around around the edge and assaulted the fortress from this side.
Okay.
when the fighting started here, the commander left in charge of the town was Hudson Lowe, who is in the other game as well as Capri. He was the garrison commander of Capri.
Right.
But he also was part of the expedition here in 1810 as the commander of the Corsican Rangers. So Hudson Lowe discovered that there was these causeways that could get across the bay. And so he was able to bring Corsican Rangers across the bay on these causeways, and he assaulted. So whilst the British were attacking from the front, he also attacked from the side, which enabled them to get into these bastions a lot easier.
Okay.
And these are discovered by the British. There's an event on the event clock that allows the British to start using these causeways. Okay. Now, the French obviously know that they're from the start. So the French can use these anytime they like, whereas the British can't use them until they're discovered.
Right. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Which does allow, because you might look at the map and think, well, there's no chance of manoeuvre. But if the British start coming around here and the French are in the fortress, the French can nip around behind them and start coming around. Because obviously what you don't want to get is get surrounded, lose a fight, be forced to break off and not be able to break off, because you cannot break off back to sea. So if the British land troops and they lose a combat and the only place they got to go is back to sea, back to the boats, then they're all destroyed. Okay. So this is very much a kind of cat and mouse game of manoeuvre to try and get in the best position. So there's quite a bit of play in it, especially for the French player, to choose when to use these causeways and how to use them. But they're difficult to use. They're only one spaces. Again, the way movement works, you're either going to have 1, 2 or 3 die, and you roll those dice needing a 5 or a 6 to move. Okay. And in these spaces, you only get 1 dice. You get 1 dice, 1 chance to roll a 5 or a 6, so it's hard to move. Yeah, sure. If you've got a commander with you, you could use his glory to re-roll those dice. And I'll explain what glory is in a second. But glory is, every commander has a rating, which is a combination of their skill and how lucky they seem to have been during the campaign. So different commanders have different ratings depending on that. And so if you're in here, you've got 1 dice, say it fails, but you've got a commander with you, you could re-roll that 1 dice, but it will cost you 1 glory point. Okay. At the start of the game, in a minute, we'll roll just to show you. So each commander, as they're placed on the map, you roll to see how much the glory they've got. This is the glory track. Yep. They only have that amount for the whole game, and they use it for movement. They also use the same glory for combats. And so you've got to decide, is it really important I move now or not? Do I need to save that glory for a combat? So there's lots of little tiny choices all the time, depending on when you feel that something's important and when you can let it go for a turn. Because if you fail to do something, you place what's called a momentum marker. These are momentum markers. Okay. So say if Louis tried to get out the windmill space here, he'd roll 2 dice, needing a 5 or a 6. If he failed, you might decide to try and re-roll it, or you might not. If he fails the second time with the re-rolls, or if he doesn't re-roll, you place a momentum marker of your side into the space, and that means that space cannot be activated by the French player again this turn. Okay. The British could go through there and activate it because they have a different colour momentum marker. Yeah. But the French couldn't. So once you fail to do something, you're kind of stuck for the rest of the turn. Fair enough. The number of momentum markers you get as well is determined each turn, and it varies each turn. Again, you can use your glory of your most senior commander to try and get more glory. So in this game, the British are landing in the bay. There's an invasion force starts with Oswald, who is leading the invasion. The Magnificent is the third rate that's escorting them. There are transport boats with them, but they're not being represented in the game. We're just representing either the frigates or the third rates that were escorting the transports. So we've got the British Army, there's 6 British troops, there's some Marines, there's Calabrians, Free Corps, there's de Rolls Regiment, also the Corsican Rangers and the Greek Light Infantry will come along as well. So there's a real hodgepodge of different troops involved. Okay. The French have got some Albanian allies, as well as the French troops on the island. Okay, okay. So how does the first turn look? What would normally happen at this stage? You're set up and ready to go. Yeah. So are we rolling for glory now? Is that what we're looking for? At setup, you've got so many commanders on the board at setup. Okay. The British will get more and more troops coming in and more commanders through the event table. Yeah. They're reintroduced when certain events occur. Okay. Normally, most of their new troops arrive in the bay as well on more boats, but some of them can turn up at sea from the Ionian side. You can get around the islands, around here in the sea. So this is sort of representing the journey around the island, because the island's much bigger here. Okay. But you would roll for glory. So in the rule book, in the setup,
Yep.
it tells you for the different commanders. So Camus, his initial glory is 18 plus 3d6.
Okay.
So what you'd do there is you'd roll 3 dice, and he has rolled 8.
Not the best.
So, no, that's not the best dice in the world.
No.
So you add that to the 18, gives you 26.
Yep.
So he's got a commander on the map to show you where he is on the map, but he's also got a second counter
Yep.
that you would put onto 26,
Right.
and that's effectively how many rerolls he's got. How many
Okay, for the whole game.
for the whole game.
Yep.
And as he's the most senior commander, his rerolls are used for gaining more momentum and lots of other things as well. So basically, you'd roll for all the commanders. Let's just put some commanders on at random. So the ships, the Magnificent, would also have glory. Let's just set these up at some values to start with.
Okay.
Just so you would roll for all these, and they'd all be determined. Oswald and Camus have got the potential of getting what's called automatic 6s. So if they rolled really high, so it's 18 plus 3d6. So if you roll 3 6s, he's going to have another 18. So 2 18s are 36, and the chart only goes up to 30. So if that had been the case, if he got, say, 36, his marker would be on 30, and then his automatic 6 marker would go on 6.
Okay.
And that would mean that if he ever wanted, when he's rolling for dice, he's got 6 opportunities. Instead of re-rolling, he could just change one of his dice automatically to a 6.
Wow.
But he's only got 6 of those attempts.
So it's a bit like Napoleon in the first game, where you could do that?
Same mechanic as Napoleon, being able to re-roll.
Sure.
So obviously for combat, it's the same in combat, but your opponent will always be able to ask you to re-roll that dice. So you might turn it to a 6, but then it could be re-rolled.
Okay.
So a turn would start. The first thing you do is you'd roll for an event.
Okay.
Enact whatever the event does. Both players would then roll their 3 dice, looking for 5s or 6s to get momentum markers. So the British player has got 2 5s, so he's got 2 momentum.
Yeah.
The French player haven't got any at all.
Okay.
So potentially this turn they're not going to be able to move. So Camus could say, well, I need to move. There's things I want to do. So he might say, well, I'm going to re-roll 2 of those dice, and he'll pay 2 glory.
Yeah.
And he'll roll those again. And now he's
1.
got a 5 and a 3.
Okay.
So he's actually ended up with 1. So he's got 1. The British got 2. Whoever's got the most will go first. They'd hold the initiative.
Yep.
If it's tied, I believe the British would go first on the tie because they're the attacker.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
The only other thing I haven't mentioned is it's hard to pronounce it. Kolokotronis,
Right.
who was the leader of the Greek resistance. So this is kind of pre-Greek independence from the Ottomans.
Yep.
But the Greek independence wars were very soon to break out, and he was one of the leaders. And he was actually attached with Captain Church with the Greek light infantry. And he came to the island the night before the attack. He landed with Hudson Lowe, actually. And he tried to persuade the Albanians to desert. So in the game, he's represented. You can place him in any space, and he can't be detected. He's got no glory.
Okay.
He can't be detected. But if he's in a space that's shared with the Albanians, you can have an attempt each turn to try and make them desert. Or if he's in the space next to the Albanians, he could as well. The only space he can't get them to desert from is within the fortress. Right. Pardon me, within the fortress. So certainly the bastion's outside. If he's outside the bastion, he can keep trying to get the Albanians to desert by doing a desert roll.
Okay.
Which again, you're looking for successes.
Yeah.
Omar or any other commander that's with the Albanians might be able to re-roll that if they wanted to, but it cost them their glory. So this glory sort of currency that you've got, there's so many demands on it, so many things you might want to use it for. You have to really choose wisely what and when to use it for.
So it's a bit like an attritional thing, isn't it? Friction in the game.
Yeah. And you can move Kolokotronis around free as part of your turn.
Okay.
Once he's had his attempt to get the Albanians to surrender, you place the activated marker on him.
Yeah.
And that effectively ends his turn. So you might have 2 or 3 momentum markers, but you can't do 2 or 3 attempts each turn.
And that
costs once per turn.
That costs a momentum to use him?
No,
or not? He's a free.
It won't cost you anything. You can move him about.
Yeah.
But because he's got no glory, there's no reroll. So if I'm in this space and I want to move it, he rolls 3 dice. If he fails, he fails, and that would place his marker.
Yeah.
So if he's over here and there's no French here and he's got to get all the way around here, he's got to move there.
Yeah.
You could put him onto a ship and sail him around and take him off again, or you could just move him by foot. But basically, he's on the map, and he's just helps you to persuade the Albanians to desert. So he's a nuisance to the French player.
Yeah. No, good. Okay.
So the British would roll. They start off in the bay here. They'd have 3 dice.
Yep.
So they roll 3 dice looking for a success, and they failed. So straight away, Oswald's got a choice. He might think, well, everything's okay. I'm fine with that. I'll leave it. So if he doesn't re-roll, that momentum marker would go in that space. Because at the moment, he's got no troops in any other space. That would effectively be the end of his turn.
Yeah.
So he might feel, I want to get things going. So he might say, I'm going to spend 3 of my glory to re-roll this because I really want to get going.
Yeah.
And he's re-rolled all 3 and still failed. So he's lost his glory and nothing's happened. It still places it.
Okay.
Then it'd be the French turn. So the French could manoeuvre to whatever they wanted to counter where they think they might be going. To start with, you might
probably
decide
quite happy.
to stay where we are.
Yep.
Camus, in the real campaign, it took the British about a week or so to get round here. Then they started setting up siege batteries against the bastion here. Once they started opening fire they took the West Bastion. Once they started opening fire onto the fortress, within a few days, not very long at all, Camus decided to surrender. He just gave up the fortress.
Okay.
The troops, there was plenty of troops inside the fortress. They had plenty of rations, plenty of ammunition. So he could have held out for a month or so, but it only went on for a few days.
Right.
And so that is reflected in the rules as well. There's a morale roll.
Okay.
So every time the fortress is assaulted, Camus has to take a morale test.
Okay.
And the morale test is whatever number space he's in. So if he's in the fortress, it's in a 3 space. He would roll 3 dice looking for a success.
Yeah.
He's got one, so he doesn't surrender this turn.
Okay.
If they had all failed, he could re-roll. If he's still got automatic 6s left, he could just use 1 6 and say, I've passed the morale test. But eventually these will run out. So for the British player to take the fortress is very difficult. But Camus's morale could collapse at any time.
Right.
So they need to assault the fortress.
Yeah.
But it's only assaulting the fortress that makes Camus take the morale test. So the French player needs to keep the British away from the fortress.
Yeah.
And so the French player, instead of just thinking, well, I'm going to just stick everything straight in the fortress and then just wait there to the end of the game.
Sure.
Because one turn, one assault, he might fail the morale and everyone surrenders.
Yeah.
So the French player has to do everything they can with manoeuvre and trying to trap and draw the British away to stop them being able to start attacking the fortress. The British, they get more and more naval elements turning up. There's several frigates. There's several other third rates will turn up. These can fight the shore batteries. On the combat table, there's a whole line for shore batteries versus naval. Okay. And so you would fight your combat with the ships against the shore batteries and the fortification. Some of the elements, some of the events will allow fortifications to be placed. So you've got your shore batteries starting in the fortresses. There's also a couple more that the French player can choose to place wherever they want to at the start of the game.
Right.
So they might say, I'm going to put one on this. The shore batteries are kind of on the line between the land and the sea. They're kind of not really in either space. So they're on the land, but they're bombarding into the sea. They can't fire inland. They only fire out to sea.
And do they only fire into the segment that they're linked to?
They do, yeah.
Right, okay.
So if this one's here, it can only fire into this sea space.
Yeah.
But if it's, say, here, it could fire into this one.
Okay.
So any naval elements here would have to fight these potentially. But the French player can only fire their shore batteries on their turn.
Right.
So you might be able to get your naval through and out the other side if you don't want to engage it. Or you may decide you want to engage it, blow it away, clear that bit of coastline and then land there. The danger is for the Allies is landing against a French force who then fights a combat and forces them to retreat. Then the amphibious landing would fail and they'd all be lost. So that's very dangerous. But some of the events allow you to get fortifications, so you can fortify your batteries.
Okay.
So that makes them stronger. So when you're fighting on the table here, each strength point of fortification adds on. So a short battery is worth 3, but if you fortified it, it's now worth 4, which takes you up to the next line. So it's between 1 or 3 or 4 to 10. So a short battery actually gets stronger and has a better chance of causing casualties.
Sure.
And Santa Maura starts off as a fortress of 12. So this short battery here is 12 plus the 3. So this is fighting on the 15 table. If you added a bit more fortification into Santa Maura, you could move it up to the 16 table. So you can make some of these shore batteries really strong if the events come up, allowing you to place fortifications, and then depending on where you choose to then place them. What else is there to think about? I suppose combat. If you've not played the game before, the way the combat works is you add up the strength of your units. The strength on the units is the number that's on them. So this is like 6 British infantry, that's kind of 1 marine, there's 2 of De Roy's corps. So this would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13.
Okay.
So all the troops in this game, even though there's lots of different troop types here, they've all got British officers. So the Calabrian Free Corps, the Greek Light Infantry, the Corsican Rangers, all had either British officers or were under kind of British sponsorship. Equipment and so on was given to them. And so as part of the expedition, they're all effectively landing as British troops. Not all of them are as good, though. And so it doesn't really matter the mix of, it's just the strength you've got. So this is 8, 9, 10, 13. So it'd be 13. So it'd be a British commander. So Oswald would be the commander. So it'd be a British commander, and their strength along the top here, you'd get to the point between 11 and 15. They've got 13. So a British commander at strength 13, they'd be fighting in that box there.
Just going to move the camera over a little bit so we can see that a bit better.
I'll turn it a little bit.
Yeah, super.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
So the British would be here. And then the French, depending on who's fighting, say they'd come to fight Camus, say they're landing over here and Camus is on the beach waiting for them. Camus would have 6 French infantry, an artillery battery. An artillery is worth 3. So his strength would be 9. So he'd be a French commander with a strength between 4 and 10. So he'd be 9, so he'd be there.
Okay.
So the way this now works is the French player would roll 3 dice. You always roll 3 dice for the combat.
Okay.
In the other Limits or Glory games, they've got 4 dice in the game. These smaller games are designed with only 3 dice, but all the other games have 4 dice.
Okay.
So normally you would roll all 4 dice for combat, but in this game you're only rolling 3.
Okay. So
the French are rolling 3 dice, needing to score at least 11 with the total of those 3 dice. And if they score at least 11, then 5s and 6s will inflict hits.
Okay. And
the British only need to score 8. So they're rolling their 3 dice. It's got to add up to 8, and then any 5s and 6s would score hits.
Okay.
So if we just roll those to start with.
Yeah.
So the British here have rolled 11, so it's more than the 8, and they've got a 5. So a 5 at the moment would cause 2 hits on the French.
Right.
The French have scored 8, which is lower than the 11, but they've also got no 5s or 6s. Okay. So at the start of the battle, the British are scoring some hits potentially, and the French are scoring none. So the attacker would choose first. So the British might say, well, we only need 8, I've got a 5. Unless I roll 2 1s, I can risk re-rolling both. So they might say, with Oswald, I'll pay 2 glory, and then move Oswald down 2 on the glory track. Here he is, 1, 2.
Yeah.
And they would roll their re-roll their 2.
Okay.
Now they don't roll them yet, because both sides declare simultaneously before the dice. Both sides declare before the dice are rolled simultaneously. So the French, Camus, would say, well, I'm going to re-roll all 3, 1, 2, 3, because mine are hopeless.
Yeah.
So then you then roll them at the same time. Now the British are doing really well there. The French have now scored 11, and they need 11, and that 6 would give them 3 hits.
Yeah.
The British have got 2 5s, they only need 8, so they've got way more than 8, they've got 14, and their 2 5s would score 4 hits. You can re-roll your own dice once, but then you can also request your opponent to re-roll their dice once. So at this stage, the British commander Oswald would say to the French, I want you to re-roll that, but that costs another glory. Okay. So he's getting weaker and weaker. That one will be re-rolled.
Yeah.
And the French player will say, I'll get you to re-roll your 2. So Camus has to pay another 2 glory to get these 2 5s re-rolled. Okay. Obviously, these could re-roll and be more 5s or 6s or not, but we'll see. So Okay, so there we go. So it's ended up no one has scored any hits on either side.
Okay.
So you might think, wow, that was a bit of a waste of time. But what has happened is Camus has used about 5 or 6 of his glory, and Oswald has used 4 or 5 of his glory, and both of them are sort of coming down the track. So if you can fight a battle and get your opponent to use more glory than you have, or if he's very weak already, he's very low on glory, he becomes much more exhausted.
Yes, not a finite resource, is it?
Exactly.
No.
Now, if the British were trying to land from the sea, if this had been the result, so it's a draw, in a draw, the attacker can choose to break off. If the attacker doesn't choose to break off, then the defender can choose to break off.
Okay.
If the defender doesn't break off, you would then fight another round of combat.
Right.
If the British break off back to sea, they'll all be totally destroyed.
Okay.
So this is a do or die thing. They cannot break off because they'll all be destroyed. So the British are not going to break off. The French could choose to retire and think, "Oh, I've done enough now," or they could say, "No, we'll fight again because this is too good an opportunity to miss." So they'd fight another battle at the same scores, going through the same procedure again, hoping to get some hits.
Okay.
Now, with the British, as I say, the different troop types, potentially there's kind of more British foot than there is any other particular individual types. The Corsican Rangers as well, there's quite a few Corsican Rangers in the campaign. They come on with one of the events. And both the British line and the Corsican Rangers were kind of very similarly trained. De Rolls regiment was also very similarly trained, a Swiss regiment. But some of the Cadburyan Free Corps and the Greek Light Infantry, perhaps not up to the level of the British regulars. And so this is reflected in the strength as well. So the British, if they start to get more and more troops because of things happening, they end up perhaps with 6 Greek Light Infantry in there as well, a few Corsican Rangers. Their army size now might be much bigger. It might be, say, 21 plus. But now, instead of being 8, they need 10. So it's actually, even though they've got a bigger army, it's actually getting harder to get hits because it's not such a coherent small force of just British regulars. It's all sorts of hodgepodge of different troops.
Sure.
And also, if they do get hits, I mean, at this sort of sweet spot here, they're getting each 6 will cause 3 hits, whereas here each 6 will only cause 2 hits.
Okay.
And so for the British, the more troops they have, if they concentrate lots of troops together, it actually makes it harder for them to win.
Yeah,
because they've got such a mixture of troops. Whereas the French, they have a similar problem because of their Albanians. They only start the game, I think, with 10 or maybe 11 French. I think it's 10 French infantry and a gun, which will take them to 13. And so you can see the table here. It's better and better. But then if you get over that, if you're over that, it must mean that you've got Albanians in the army, which then will make it worse again for you.
Right. Okay.
So that's what's going on there with the combat table.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you for the overview. That's been really interesting.
Okay.
I think that would hopefully give the viewers a good idea of how the game works.
I hope so.
We'll have a look at one of your old ones, Capri, maybe, as well. That would be great.
Yeah, I'll talk more about the events table in Capri as well. Because we cover the combat table here, and I'll talk a bit about the events table and how that works with Capri.
Excellent. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.